What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, for this episode, we are reviewing Celtic City. It's a documentary about the history of the Boston Celtics. It was released on HBO Max. It was released in March of 2025. It's June now. I'm just now getting around to doing a video for it because actually it was 9 parts. Now, did it need to be 9 parts? No, but it took a while because 9 parts, 9 episodes, 9 weeks. So my thoughts about this docu series is that I enjoyed learning about the very rich history of the Boston Celtics, and rich, and I'm not talking about money, but just longevity, all the legends that was involved with the Boston Celtics, and HBO Max doing this documentary, it should open the doors for all the teams to follow suit, to make documentaries of the history of their teams. I think the first post Celtic City documentary should be about the Chicago Bulls. Now, we all know Michael Jordan is a big part of Chicago Bulls history, but there is more history dating back to the 70s and 80s. So, a fun fact about me, my uncle is Ronald Dunlap, and he actually played for the Bulls in the 1960s, so right around the time the team was first born. The Chicago Bulls should have a basketball documentary, in my opinion. And also, Post Jordan has rich history as well because of the days of Derrick Rose, the days of Joakim Noah, all that stuff. So, HBO should get on it. As you guys know, how I do my entertainment reviews is KWL. Know, want to know, and learn. Again, this documentary was 9 parts, so it's a lot to learn. So we'll start with the know. So what I know about the Boston Celtics, again, the rich history. It does have a lot of history of winning championships, along with their one of their first coaches was Red Auerbach. I forgot to write that down. Drafted Larry Bird, who is from Indiana. Uh, they had that infamous Laker feud. It started back in like the early days of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it was still going on when I was a teenager when they were in the playoffs. Brian J. White, so if you guys don't know who that is, he's in a lot of Tyler Perry movies. Like, you probably don't know the name, but if you saw his face, you'd be like, oh yeah, he was in that Tyler Perry movie. So his father was JoJo White, and JoJo White used to play for the Boston Celtics. They drafted Lynn Bias, but he died of a cocaine overdose probably like a day after he was drafted. They did a big draft in 2007, 2008 to get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, and they won a championship. I remember because I watched all the games for that. Red Auerbach coached them during the championship era, which was the 1950s to 1960s. So I did actually write that down. One of their head coaches is Doc Rivers. He's from Chicago. So shout out to Doc Rivers. And also Shaq played for the Celtics briefly. And I think the Celtics was one of the last teams that Shaq played for before retiring. All right, so we are on the want to know. So I wanted to know like the early days of the Boston Celtics, like how did they get their name? How did they choose to play at the Boston Garden? How did they choose their logo? How did they choose, things like that. I wanted to know more about Red Auerbach's early coaching days. I wanted to know about the Celtics post Larry Bird, but pre Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. I wanted to also know any unknown facts about the Garnett and Allen trade, and then what is the future for the Boston Celtics. So I didn't want to know a lot, but I learned a lot as well, because again, y'all, this was 9 parts, 9 weeks. All right. So the first thing I learned is that it was named after Irish culture, which made a lot of sense because they had green and clovers and all that stuff. So I guess that one kind of went over my head. Red Auerbach wanted to be a gym teacher originally. Now that makes sense because when I was watching an old Red Auerbach documentary, now he died in 2006, so I don't think This was in 2006. This was probably like a year or so after he passed away. And it was on ESPN. Red Auerbach was dressed like a gym teacher. He had a whistle around his neck. I mean, I understand he was a head coach, but it wasn't during that time. And he just looked so, gym teacher ish to me. And yeah, like he would have made a great gym teacher. Red Auerbach also had multiple positions. Granted, he had to sell tickets and all that stuff, and it was given to him by the founder of the Boston Celtics. Now, y'all got to remember, this was like the early days of the NBA. It was not as glamorous as it is now, where you see dudes with like earrings that cost about the same as someone's house. It was kind of low budget in the beginning. Bob Cousy is still alive. He's in his 90s, but he's still alive. I just learned that. The first African American player in the NBA is Chuck Cooper, and I never knew that. And I really, really wish that they would put that in like Black History books and stuff like that. Black history is more than learning about slavery. Black history can also extend to arts. It can extend to science. And growing up, I never read any books that stated this fact. I just now learned this at 30 years old. Red Auerbach fined players for silly things like eating pancakes on game days, which did not make sense to me because pancakes are delicious, not healthy for you all the time, but they are good. And this was back in like the 50s and 60s. They didn't have like the flapjack protein pancakes, but pancakes are so good. You don't have to, find them for that. Hotel denied black players in Kentucky, which I thought it was sad because they play basketball, but I guess during that time like racism was still alive and floating around. So another thing I learned is PF Flyers was originally a basketball shoe. Now the reason why I wrote that down is because when I was in high school, my freshman year of high school was 2009 to 2010, and everybody wanted a pair of PF Flyers. I just always thought they looked like Converses to me, and it was just a knockoff of Converses. They were probably cheaper or whatever, but no, PF Flyers has been around a long time, and I don't know what made like the 14-year-old kids of 2009, bring them back, but it is what it is. I never had a pair. I was a Converse girl. I have like a lot of Converses, never PF Flyers. JFK, John F. Kennedy Sr., met the Boston Celtics before his assassination. So his assassination was in November around Thanksgiving. So an NBA championship is in the summer. So that was like a good 4 to 5 months of them meeting and then him getting assassinated. Bill Russell participated in civil rights boycotts. He had a jazz radio station, and he started a basketball league for the youth. Again, I knew very little about Bill Russell until I was an adult. This stuff like this should have been put in Black history books. I think our youth need to learn that Bill Russell was a basketball star, but he also was an entrepreneur and also an activist. You know, but they didn't, and now we have to learn at a grown age about Bill Russell, especially that he passed away like a couple years ago, which was not fair to me to learn this at this time. Red Auerbach sold season seats himself, so that goes back to me saying that he had multiple positions from the founder. The Boston Garden, the original Boston Garden, because the players, the Boston Celtics players that we watch on TV now, that's at the TD Garden. So the original Boston Garden was a terrible place. It had parquet wood and bad floor spots. That sounds like a danger hazard to me. Parquet wood and bad floor spots. Oof. So Red Auerbach officially stopped coaching in 1966, but he was still involved with the Boston Celtics until he died. Boston did not want to play after the Martin Luther King assassination. And the reason why I wrote this down is because I did James Brown's Say It Loud's documentary. James Brown did the same thing. He did not want to have a concert after after Martin Luther King's assassination, because he wanted everyone to stay home and be safe. Because if you guys remember, 1968, after Martin Luther King was assassinated, there was a lot of riots in the big cities, Chicago, Detroit, all that stuff. So I understand why Boston also follows suit with that, but they ended up playing anyway. Donnie Wahlberg, he was also in the documentary. He opened up about the racism and the witnessing racism and protests, which is kind of set me back, because didn't his brother Mark Wahlberg kind of get arrested for that back in the day, like back in the 80s? So I'm like, was your brother involved too, or I don't know. But he did open. He was on the documentary, basically talking about that. Boston was fighting before Malice in the Palace, for example, and this was like way in the further future of the documentary. Danny Ainge got bit versus the Atlanta Hawks, so I didn't know that. I thought the fighting stopped with Malice in the Palace, and then that Carmelo Anthony fight with the New York Knicks, and then there's a lot more fights now with the people in the NBA now, because that's all they want to do is fight. Um, Dave Cowens, he walked away from the team, and he said he didn't think it was a big deal. I'm like, fam, you just walked away from your team, and you didn't think it was a big deal. That's odd. In 1979, people complained about the black NBA players. In 1979, oh, if those same people was alive to see the NBA now, they will still be complaining. But I didn't know complaining about the league being predominantly black was all the way back in the 1979. I didn't know that. The current Celtics coach is 36 years old, so fairly young. Also in the documentary was New Edition. Well, not New Edition. Belle Biv DeVoe. Ronnie. Ronnie DeVoe, Mike Bivens, and Ricky Bell. Yeah. So they were in there, and I didn't know that New Edition. I thought I knew every New Edition song, but apparently not. New Edition made a song for the Boston Celtics because they're from Boston. Bill Walton, rest in peace. He was on there as well. He was up there looking like Luke. Well, Luke looked like Bill, so looking like his son, and son looking like his daddy. It was so sweet. Rest in peace, Bill Walton. Larry, Bill, and Kevin McHale hung out with Jerry Garcia. So that also tells me that NBA players been hanging out in concerts and stuff. They just didn't play basketball and go home. A lot of when I would watch older basketball documentaries, I always thought these guys just played and go home. But no, I guess Larry Bird, Bill Walton, and Kevin McHale, they hung out with Jerry Garcia as well. There was a huge scandal with Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas and Dennis Rodman. Um, Basically, it was said that Larry Bird got the MVP because he was white, and yeah, there was a big controversy around that. Larry Bird retired in 1992. I always thought he retired in like 1991, but apparently I was a year off, so 92. Dee Brown was racially profiled in Boston. Dee Brown is an African American basketball player, and actually he was recognized by a stranger, and that's what actually saved him from the incident from the police. The Boston Celtics also had a basketball player named Reggie Lewis. He had a heart ailment, but it was misdiagnosed with a faint condition, and he had a third opinion. He actually ended up passing away from playing basketball. They said that he was just shooting hoops, and then all of a sudden they stopped hearing him shoot hoops, and he collapsed and passed away. So that also goes to show that the American healthcare system has always been, you know, messed up, even for someone who plays in the NBA and makes $1 million. It's still messed up. And to be misdiagnosed, ooh, my headphones. To be misdiagnosed for a faint condition, but he had like a severe heart condition, which is just terrible. Um, Kevin McHale retired in 93. I always thought Kevin McHale was like older than he was. I always thought he retired probably in like 89 or something, but it was 93. Robert Parrish left the team in 94. On the documentary, Antoine Walker makes an appearance, And I remember the days of Anton Walker playing in the NBA. Now, he's from Chicago as well. And also, if you guys didn't know, Antoine Walker was engaged to Evelyn Lozada from Basketball Wives. So, and I guess when he started to lose his money, that's when she left. That's what I heard. So he was on the documentary. He looked a lot huskier. Like he looked like he was really enjoying his retired life. Another thing I did not know was Rick Fox used to play for Boston. Now, whenever I see Rick Fox, I automatically affiliate him with the Lakers. Like that's all I've seen him play, the Lakers. But I didn't know he played for the Boston Celtics as well. Um, Back in 1997, the Boston Celtics were eyeing Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is one of the best basketball players from the 90s to the probably mid 2010s, but unfortunately, he did not get drafted by the Celtics. He actually got drafted by the San Antonio Spurs, where he had a full career with them. And then they hired Rick Pitino. And long story short, what happened with Rick Pitino? His coaching history sucked with the Boston Celtics. And then, let's see, Chauncey Billups was drafted in to the Celtics in 1997. Chauncey Billups is actually one of my favorite basketball players. I remember when he won the championship with the Detroit Pistons. And then back in like 2007, 2008, I was like in middle school. I remember when they drafted him from Detroit to Denver, and they traded him for Allen Iverson. And when Allen Iverson got traded to Detroit, that was kind of the end for Allen Iverson. I started seeing him play less and less. But Chauncey Billups, he did thrive with the Denver Nuggets. They just didn't win like a championship or anything. And I did see Chauncey Billups play in person with I seen both AI and Chauncey Billups play with Carmelo Anthony and the Denver Nuggets in person at the United Center. D Brown got traded and he found out through a note. I thought that was like the most impersonal thing ever. Like I thought that was terrible. You find out through a note. Now, if you find out through a TV on SportsCenter, that's kind of different, but through a note, like that's just so impersonal. They drafted Paul Pierce in 1998. My God, that's about 27 years ago. He was in 10th place. He went to University of Kansas, and he was not happy about the team that drafted him because Paul Pierce is actually from LA. So again, the whole LA and Boston feud. And I always wondered, like, how did he adjust to going to like the University of Kansas, especially a guy coming from the West Coast? Like the West Coast and the Midwest, we live two different lifestyles. I mean, out in the West Coast, you got palm trees and nice weather year round. Like if even if it's like fall, their fall temperatures would probably be like the low 60s. Like we would in fall in Chicago, we would like scream if we had like low 60s fall weather. Our fall weather is like 55 and under to like 40 degrees, which is still cold to us. Like we still got to get under a blanket. So he wasn't happy about his team choice. They finally celebrated Bill Russell in 1999. Bill Russell should have been celebrated way before that. So 1999 from the 1960s, that's about 30 plus years, or in the 30-year realm. It should not have taken that long for that man who had influence on the youth by having a basketball league, who had a jazz radio station, who basically made Black history. It should not have taken him 30 plus years to be celebrated. And I didn't like that. Paul Pierce was stabbed 11 times at a Boston nightclub. He actually had to testify in court about his stabbing, which I didn't know about that. Until they played like the footage of him in court. He had PTSD to a point where he wanted to be traded out of Boston, which I don't blame him. He does, if something like that happened and you don't want to be in the same city, completely understandable. Rick Pitino quit being a head coach after a game. Like he didn't get fired, he just quit after a game. Shaq actually gave Paul Pierce's nickname The Truth, which I didn't know that. I always thought that, when NBA players get their nicknames, it comes from like the like the analyst who sits courtside on the games or who interviews them. But nope, for Paul Pierce, it was Shaq that gave him his nickname. Kevin Garnett declined to come to Boston at first. I don't know why, because the other team he played for was the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wasn't nothing going on in Minnesota. Go on to Boston now. The team dynamic changed after the Kendrick Perkins trade. So Kendrick Perkins was traded away, and things just got different with the Umbutu situation. There was a public fallout with Ray Allen, and then Ray signed with, well, it happened after Ray Allen signed with the Miami Heat, who ironically beat them in the finals. Doc Rivers left in 2013 to coach the Clippers. Also on the Clippers was his son, Austin. So I don't remember him leaving. Actually, right around the time I graduated, no, 2012 is when I officially stopped really following basketball, because I was a senior in high school. I had to like focus on graduating. I wasn't focused on watching basketball all the time. Kevin and Paul Pierce went to Brooklyn. So I always wondered what happened to them, because I looked up one day when I was like in my 20s and they were retiring. But no, I didn't know that they went to the Brooklyn Nets. So they had another young coach named Brad Stevens. Oh, Brad Stevens is the coach. That's 36. Okay, I'm sorry. Donnie Wahlberg helped Jaylen Brown get used to Boston, which I thought was the nicest thing ever. I would love to meet Donnie Wahlberg, because he just seems like the coolest guy ever. Mark Wahlberg, I don't know, but Donnie is all right with me. And then Joe Mazzulla, he came in to coach the Boston Celtics after the Coach Udoka's cheating scandal with Nia Long. So they got another coach. And lastly, Paul Pierce has a post-career relationship with the Boston Celtics, which is very nice, because Paul Pierce has played for the Boston Celtics for most of his career. So that was really nice to learn, that he still is there to mentor the new players and everything. So I do give this documentary Mandy Stars a 5 out of 5. What I liked is just seeing Red Auerbach in archive footage. Also included in the documentary was his daughter, and also an archive of the deceased players like Bill Russell. Who else? There was Lynn Bias archive. Just seeing the players that are no longer with us. Also, the celebrity cameos, Belle Biv DeVoe, there was Donnie Wahlberg. Just seeing the celebrities from Boston. They're actually from Boston. What I disliked was that 9 parts, again, is too long. That's why it took me forever to even put this episode together. It should have been probably, I want to say, 4 parts. 4 parts would have done great. And it could have been like a 4-night event, but instead of 9 weeks of episodes. And also being reminded of the story of Lynn Bias and how cocaine has done damage to the human community. So yeah, that is the episode regarding Celtic City. It is available on HBO Max, and it's still there for all to view. And thank you again for listening, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.